This is the story of Miguel Santos, a 28-year-old Filipino security guard who thought the worst thing about night shifts would be boredom. But what began as a simple job at a soon-to-close department store would become a descent into terror he would never forget. Because sometimes when you're alone in the dark, you're not really alone. Miguel needed the money. That's why he said yes even though the hours were rough. It was his cousin June who got him the job security guard at the old Baywalk department store on the edge of town. The place had been open since the 1980s but was now on its last legs, with rumors of bankruptcy. Most shops were closed, the staff laid off, and the remaining stock was being cleared out before the final shutdown next month. The management still wanted a night guard, though. To deter looters, June had said, though he looked uncomfortable when he mentioned it. "It's quiet there," June added. "You just walk the floors a few times, stay in the booth, watch the cameras. Easiest money you'll make." Miguel wasn't picky. After losing his last construction job, anything steady sounded good. The thought of having the entire building to himself sounded peaceful. The first night was a humid Wednesday in late June. Miguel arrived just before 10 p.m. in a faded security uniform with a flashlight, a bottle of water, and a cheap old smartphone. The building loomed in front of him, 5 stories of concrete and glass, dark except for a few lights in the entrance hall. The massive neon Baywalk sign was half broken, buzzing faintly. Mr. Reyes, the building's manager, met him at the door. An older man with a sour expression, Reyes handed him a ring of old keys and a radio. "Main power is shut off after midnight," Reyes said. "Emergency lights only. Don't touch anything. Stay away from the basement." Miguel frowned. "Why?" Reyes sighed. "Flooded last month. Still smells bad. Just do your rounds ground floor to 5th. If you hear anything weird, call me." "But you won't." With that, Reyes left, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. Miguel stood in the empty lobby, alone, with only the distant hum of a generator for company. He looked around. Faded banners still hung from the ceiling, anniversary sale, and everything must go. The escalators were off, the food court dark and empty. At first, the silence felt calming. Miguel walked the floors slowly, flashlight in hand. He passed abandoned clothing racks, shuttered stores, and old mannequins gathering dust. Occasionally, he heard small noises, creaks, pops, the soft groan of settling concrete. Normal for an old building, he told himself. Midnight came and went. The place grew darker. The emergency lights cast long shadows across the tiled floors. Miguel returned to the security booth, an old glass-walled office on the 2nd floor, and settled in front of the monitors. For grainy black and white feeds showed empty hallways. For a while, Miguel scrolled his phone board. Then, around 2:13 a.m., one of the cameras flickered. He looked up. Camera 3, 5th floor. A figure was moving at the edge of the frame. Miguel leaned closer, heart thumping. The figure was tall, thin, pale. It moved oddly, its gait jerky. It walked out of view, disappearing into the shadows. There shouldn't have been anyone up there. He was alone. Miguel swallowed. Maybe it was a glitch? But something about the way it moved. Gripping his flashlight, Miguel stood, grabbed the radio, and started toward the 5th floor. The echo of his footsteps followed him up the emergency stairs. When he reached the 5th floor, the corridor was cold. His breath fogged slightly, though the building wasn't air-conditioned. The stores here were all closed. The windows were black with grime. He swept the beam of his flashlight back and forth. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed. Nothing. He walked slowly past shuttered toy stores and dusty shelves. The silence pressed against him. Then a soft sound like something scraping. Miguel turned sharply. Ahead, in the dim light, one of the mannequins was standing in the middle of the hallway. He was sure it hadn't been there before. Miguel froze. The mannequin stood about 10 feet ahead, its pale face tilted slightly to one side, empty eyes staring directly at him. It was a female figure, dressed in a dusty red dress, arms positioned unnaturally, one bent upward, the other stretched to the side. He raised his flashlight higher. Goosebumps prickled on his arms. He knew this floor well already, he'd done 2 rounds tonight. The mannequins had all been inside the closed storefronts, grouped in corners behind display glass. None had been in the hallways. His throat felt dry. Anybody there? He called softly. No reply. For a long minute he stood perfectly still, listening. No scraping sound now, just the faint hum of a dead mall. Finally he stepped closer, shining the beam all around. The air smelled faintly of mildew. The mannequin's face was chipped. One glass eye cracked. Maybe someone was messing with him? Reyes playing a prank? But no, he'd locked the entrance behind himself. No one else should be inside. Maybe he'd missed it earlier. Maybe. Trying to shake it off, Miguel gripped the mannequin's cold arm and dragged it aside, tucking it back near the wall. The joints resisted, stiff and creaky. Then he swept the entire 5th floor, every hallway, every empty shop. Nothing. Feeling slightly foolish, he returned to the security booth and sat again, watching the camera feeds. His heart was still beating faster than usual. An hour passed. 3:21 a.m. Miguel was about to stand for another round when a flicker. Camera 3 again. 5th floor. The same figure, tall, pale, this time moving faster across the screen. Miguel jumped up, grabbing his flashlight again. His mouth felt dry. Shit, he whispered to himself. He reached for the radio. Mr. Reyes, sir, you copy? Static. No reply. The building was suddenly too quiet. Miguel forced himself to breathe slowly. Okay, just go check again. Maybe a wiring glitch. He climbed back up the emergency stairs. 5th floor. Again that cold air. The faint scent of old mold. Miguel swept his light side to side, shoes crunching faint debris on the floor. When he turned the corner toward the main hallway, he froze. Now there were 3 mannequins standing in a row down the corridor, evenly spaced. 1 male, 1 female, 1 child, all facing him. Their limbs were arranged in strange poses, heads cocked unnaturally. Miguel's chest tightened. He hadn't touched any mannequins but the first. The corridor was silent. No wind, no sound. No one else should be here. He stepped closer, the beam trembling slightly in his hand. Then, very faintly, he heard it. A soft tap-tap-tap like plastic fingers brushing glass. Miguel turned, nothing. When he looked back, the smallest mannequin, the child, was now slightly closer. He hadn't seen it move. The flashlight beam trembled harder. Nope, Miguel whispered, backing away. He hurried back to the stairwell, rushing down to the 2nd floor, heart racing. Once inside the security booth, he slammed the door shut and locked it. His hands shook as he gripped the radio. Mr. Reyes, please respond. Only static. The old fluorescent light in the booth buzzed loudly, flickering once. Miguel wiped sweat from his brow. This wasn't normal. He glanced at the monitors again, camera 3, frozen now, gray static. It was nearly 4 a.m. when Miguel finally forced himself to calm down. The mannequins, he could barely believe it himself. Maybe it was a prank? Maybe Reyes wanted him to quit? He wasn't going to let himself get spooked so easily. Miguel stood, shaking out his arms. Just a couple more hours until sunrise. Then he could talk to Reyes. He grabbed his flashlight again and decided to sweep the lower floors this time. Ground floor empty. Just the old posters and cold, still air. 2nd floor silent. 3rd floor, the old electronics shop still had TVs in the window, blank screens staring out. Miguel paused in front of one and noticed something strange. His reflection looked delayed, half a second behind his movements. He turned away quickly, heart pounding again. Don't think about it, he muttered. 4th floor, nothing new. Finally, Miguel headed toward the stairwell near the loading dock. He remembered Reyes' words, "Stay away from the basement." But as he passed the landing, he noticed something odd. The heavy basement door, always padlocked, was slightly ajar. A thin sliver of darkness gaped between the frame. A faint, sour-smelling breeze wafted up the stairwell. Miguel's skin crawled. He'd heard no sound of the lock breaking. It had been closed earlier for sure. Someone or something had opened it. Against all instinct, he stepped closer, pushing the door a little wider. A steep stairway led down into pitch blackness. Far below, he thought he heard a faint wet drip, 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 then something else. A whisper, soft, garbled, echoing faintly from the depths below. Miguel's breath caught. He strained to hear. "Miguel?" The voice was hoarse. "Wrong. like something trying to sound human but not quite succeeding. "Miguel, come, help." Miguel slammed the door shut, shoving the bolt back into place. His hands trembled. Then, without warning, he heard a sharp metallic clang against the door from the other side. Bang! He stumbled back, heart hammering. Bang! Bang! Then silence. Miguel ran back to the second-floor booth, locked himself inside. This time, he didn't bother trying the radio again. His phone, no signal. He sat in the corner of the booth, knees drawn up, flashlight tight in his grip, waiting for dawn. But deep down, Miguel knew something in this building had noticed him, and it wasn't done yet. Miguel didn't know if he had fallen asleep. He must have, because when his eyes snapped open, it was still dark, but something was wrong. The booth light was off. The power hadn't flickered out, but the switch was flipped down, and Miguel was sure he hadn't touched it. A cold sweat spread down his back. He stood slowly, flashlight shaking in his grip. The monitors buzzed faintly. 3 were showing static now. Only camera 2, third-floor corridor, still worked. And on it, Miguel saw something that made his blood run cold. There was a figure standing in front of one of the old clothing shops. Pale, tall, not a mannequin. The figure was too thin, too angular. The arms were long and jointed wrong, hanging too low. The head twitched every few seconds, jerking slightly. He watched in horror as it began dragging something across the floor, a long, limp shape. Then the camera feed flickered. The figure was suddenly much closer to the lens, as if it had moved inhumanly fast between frames. Miguel stumbled back, breath coming hard. "Not human," he whispered. "Not human." The old stories came rushing back. Baywalk department store had been cursed for years, some said. A fire in the 90s that had killed 2 janitors. A child who had vanished. Strange sounds from the basement. He had laughed it off at the time. Now he wasn't laughing. He gripped the radio again, voice trembling. "Anyone, this is Miguel Santos at Baywalk. I need backup. Something is in here with me." Static. No answer. He looked back at the camera feed. The figure was gone. The hallway was empty again. A sudden crash echoed up from the ground floor. Miguel flinched. Another crash, louder, like something was knocking over metal shelves. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs. He killed the booth light and crouched low, flashlight off. The footsteps drew closer. Then a faint, high-pitched giggle, a childlike, but warped. Miguel squeezed his eyes shut, heart hammering. Then silence again. After what felt like forever, he dared to look at the monitors. All 4 were now static. The cameras were dead. 5:02 a.m. The faintest hint of gray light seeped into the edges of the building. Dawn was coming, but it wasn't fast enough. Miguel sat trembling in the booth. Then his phone buzzed. A single bar of signal. Without thinking, he dialed June's number. It rang once, twice, then June's sleepy voice. "Hello?" Miguel spoke fast, voice shaking. "June, listen, something is in this building. I saw it on the cameras. The basement door opened. There's something here. I need out." June was silent for a second, then said quietly, "You saw it too." Miguel froze. "What?" June's voice dropped lower. "I worked at Post last year. Only 2 weeks. I told Reyes I wouldn't come back. The cameras catch things sometimes. It's the basement, Miguel. The place isn't right. Don't go down there. Just stay safe. Wait until morning." Miguel's skin crawled. He opened his mouth to speak. The phone cut to static. A loud bang echoed down the hallway. Miguel peered out the booth window. His breath caught. In the center of the second-floor hallway, the mannequins were back. 6 of them now, arranged in a circle facing inward. Their arms were twisted and pointed toward the floor. In the center of the circle, a dark, wet stain had spread across the tile. Miguel's legs trembled. He knew instinctively something below was calling. The basement door had been opened for a reason, and whatever was inside wanted him to come down. Miguel knew he should stay in the booth. Wait for the sun to rise. But the more he sat there, the stronger the pull became, like something beneath the building was calling to him. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something deeper. Like the darkness below wanted him to come. His hands shook as he checked the time. 5:28 a.m. Dawn was close, but every second dragged. Then the lights in the hallway flickered once, then died completely. Total darkness. Only the faint glow of the sky outside provided any light, but inside the mall was pitch black. A sharp, metallic clang echoed from the lower floors. Miguel stood, teeth clenched. If he waited here, trapped in the dark, it would only get worse. Gripping his flashlight like a weapon, he stepped out of the booth. The mannequins were gone, but a faint trail of wet footprints now led toward the stairwell. Miguel swallowed hard. He followed. Down the stairs. Third floor, second, ground. At the basement door, he stopped. It was open again. Wide this time. A gaping black mouth leading down into the unknown. The foul smell was stronger now, damp rot, old blood, something worse. The urge to turn and run was overwhelming, but something deeper made him step forward. One step, two. Flashlight beam jittering on cracked concrete stairs. The sound of dripping water echoed louder as he descended. The basement was larger than he had imagined. Rows of rusted shelves, broken crates. Water puddled on the floor. And in the far corner, a heavy steel door stood slightly open. Faint whispers seeped from within. "Miguel, come, help us." The voice was wrong. It knew his name. He approached slowly, breath ragged. When he pushed the door wider, a blast of cold air hit him. Inside was an old storage room. The walls were burned black, the ceiling scorched. Miguel's heart froze. This was where the fire had happened. The one people whispered about. Scattered across the floor, bones. Small bones? Adult and child. Blackened and fused with melted plastic and old clothing. And in the center, a circle of old, rotting mannequins sat like grotesque figures at a ritual, arms entwined, faces melted. At their feet, an old book, leather-bound, pages yellowed and singed. As Miguel stepped closer, a deep, wet voice rumbled from the dark. "You came. Now you will stay." Miguel stumbled back, flashlight beam shaking wildly. From the shadows, a shape began to move, tall, skeletal, half-burned. Its skin was gray and blistered, the face frozen in a rictus grin. One eye socket empty, the other glaring with unnatural light. It dragged its body upright, arms cracking. Miguel turned, sprinting back toward the stairs, but the basement door slammed shut with a deafening boom. Trapped. He pounded on the door, shouting, but no sound answered him. Behind him, the thing scraped forward. "Stay, stay, stay," it whispered in a voice of ash and smoke. Miguel spun, grabbing an old metal rod from a crate. He swung wildly, connecting with the thing's outstretched arm. It barely flinched. Its other arm shot out, grabbing his shoulder with a grip like iron. Pain lanced through him as the icy fingers burned into his skin. Miguel screamed, then kicked out hard, breaking free. He stumbled backward, landing against the old book. Desperate, he grabbed it, flipping it open. The pages were filled with strange symbols, faded ink, diagrams of circles and eyes. In the margins, words in Tagalog scrawled in a shaking hand. "It must be bound below. Never opened. Never freed. Burn the book." Miguel's breath caught. The book was part of it. The thing was advancing again, long fingers twitching. Miguel grabbed a rusted can of paint thinner from the floor, splashed it over the book, fumbled for his lighter. With shaking hands, he flicked the flame, touched it to the soaked cover. Humph! Fire burst upward, bright and searing. The creature screamed, a horrible, rattling sound that shook the walls. Miguel threw himself flat as the flames roared higher, the old wood and paper feeding a sudden inferno. Smoke filled the room. Through the flames, he saw the creature staggering, body breaking apart, melting, shrinking back into the shadows. The steel door creaked open behind him, no longer locked. Miguel didn't hesitate. He sprinted up the stairs, lungs burning, out into the dim dawn light, through the front entrance, into the street, collapsing to his knees in the empty parking lot, gasping for air. The sun was finally rising. Miguel sat on the curb in the early morning light, gasping for breath. His clothes reeked of smoke. His arms were covered in scrapes and burns. His shoulder throbbed where the thing had grabbed him. Angry, blackened fingerprints burned into the skin. The mall looked quiet, still abandoned as always. For a long time, Miguel sat shaking, trying to make sense of what had happened. He had no idea how long he'd been down there. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Reyes. "Report after your shift. We need to discuss your behavior last night." Miguel stared at the screen in disbelief. Reyes had no idea. He forced himself to his feet and limped home. That afternoon, after a fitful sleep full of nightmares, he woke to loud knocking. June stood at the door, face pale. "I heard what happened," June said quietly. "The old guys are talking. They said there was smoke in the building this morning. Security fire alarm glitched, no one else saw it. They say you opened the basement." Miguel nodded slowly. June's eyes darkened. "You need to understand. That place, it's tied to something old. I tried to warn you." He pulled out a worn newspaper clipping from his pocket and handed it to Miguel. Baywalk Department Store Fire, 1998. 2 dead in basement storage blaze. Cause unknown. Rumors of occult symbols found at the scene. Store reopened despite public outcry. Miguel's breath caught. The symbols. The book. June pointed at the date. That wasn't the first time. There was another fire in the 1970s when the building was first going up. People said they found bones in the foundations. Some said an old cult used that ground long ago before the mall was built. Miguel felt cold all over. "It's not done with you," June said quietly. "If you burn the book, it may be angry. That thing below, it will find a way out." That night, Miguel couldn't sleep. At midnight, his phone buzzed again. A text, unknown number. "You came. You saw. You cannot leave." Miguel's blood ran cold. Then a picture message. A grainy image, himself standing at the booth window last night. Taken from behind. But no one had been there. Miguel's hands shook. He knew. The fire had weakened the seal, not ended it. Something was coming. The next day, Miguel went back to the mall, but not for his shift. He had to find Reyes, get answers. Reyes met him in the management office, cold-eyed as always. "You've been telling stories, Santos," he said flatly, "scaring the staff. That won't be tolerated." Miguel slammed the old news clipping on the desk. "I saw it, sir. You know what's down there. You told me to stay away. You knew." Reyes's jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a low voice, he admitted, "I've worked here 15 years. The owners, they don't care. The land is cheap because of what's buried here. No one wants it, but money keeps the place running." He leaned closer. "The basement is older than the mall. Some of the original construction crew went missing. They found bones in the walls. The fire in 98 wasn't an accident." Miguel's heart pounded. Reyes looked haunted. "We learned to manage it. As long as the basement door stays sealed and no one stirs the old things, it's quiet. But you opened it. You burned the book. Now the seal is broken." He handed Miguel a small key. "Storage locker. 3rd floor. There's more. Old files. Maybe you'll understand. But I can't help you more than that. I won't go down there again." Miguel took the key with shaking hands. Whatever he had started, it wasn't over, and he wasn't sure he would survive what was coming next. Miguel gripped the old key tightly as he made his way back into the mall the next night. Not for a shift, this time on his own. No one else would come with him. The building was silent, abandoned, more than usual, as if it was waiting. He climbed to the 3rd floor, footsteps echoing through the dark. Storage locker 3C. It was an old maintenance closet, tucked behind a wall of forgotten mannequins. The lock clicked open with a reluctant groan. Inside, dusty boxes. Files, tapes, old photographs yellowed with age. Miguel opened the top box. The first folder was marked, Baywalk, PRE Construction Survey, 1968. Inside, blueprints, early ones with strange handwritten notes along the edges. Site unsuitable, old chapel ruins found. Cleared per instruction. Unmarked crypt beneath, stone altar. No records, filled with concrete. Miguel's stomach churned. An old crypt, buried under the foundations. No wonder the fires had happened. No wonder the land felt cursed. Another folder, Fire Incident 1998. Photos, scorched mannequins, bones, strange burned symbols on the walls. The same as those in the book he had burned. One report and signed. Entity not contained. Ritual incomplete. Losses acceptable. Keep sealed. Rotate staff. Miguel's hands shook. They'd known. All along. The owners had left the thing trapped down there, and he had broken the seal. A sudden cold wind swept through the storage room. The mannequins outside the door had moved. Now they were facing the locker, arms raised. Miguel slammed the door shut, heart racing. He grabbed the folders, stuffed them into his backpack, and fled down the stairs. The mall seemed darker than ever, shadows thick and watchful. As he passed the basement door, it stood open again, waiting. Miguel didn't stop running until he was back outside, breath ragged, sweat freezing on his skin. Miguel spent the next day poring over the files. The more he read, the more horrifying the truth became. Baywalk had been built over a ruined chapel from the Spanish colonial era. A secretive sect, some kind of death cult, had worshipped there. They performed rites to something they called Anganino sa Ilalim, the shadow beneath. When the chapel was destroyed, the crypt had been filled with concrete, but the curse had remained. The fires in the 70s and 90s, accidental awakenings. Workers stirring the old remains. And now, Miguel had burned the last ward. There was only one note of hope. If fire cannot destroy it, bind it again. Complete the circle. Blood must be given. Miguel knew what he had to do. That night, he returned to the mall. The basement was calling. He could feel it in his bones. Armed with a crowbar, a flashlight, and chalk to redraw the old circle, he descended once more. The basement door opened silently as he approached. Inside, the air was ice cold. The burnt room was blackened, the book's ashes scattered. But the thing was still there, hiding in the shadows. Its whisper echoed from the walls. Miguel, blood, bind us again. His skin crawled. He forced himself forward. Shaking, he began to draw the old binding circle, copying the symbols from the files. As he worked, the shadows writhed, the burned creature taking shape, taller, stronger than before. It lashed out, knocking Miguel across the room. Pain shot through him. Blood spilled from a gash on his arm, falling into the center of the circle. The symbols flared with sudden light. The thing screamed, a sound of fury and pain. Miguel forced himself upright, continuing the symbols, chanting the old words from the margin notes. The creature clawed toward him, but the circle held. Blood, bind. Stay! With a final shout, Miguel completed the circle. A wave of freezing air blasted outward, slamming the steel door shut behind him. The creature's form twisted, shrinking, trapped once more inside the old lines of power. Miguel collapsed to his knees, shaking, soaked in sweat and blood. It was bound again, for now, but he knew it would not stay forever. The curse was older than the mall, older than the city itself. And if others stirred it again. Miguel woke late the next day, body aching, arm bandaged. His mind replayed the night over and over. The binding circle, the creature's scream. He should have felt relief, but instead he felt watched. Every shadow in his small apartment seemed darker than usual. Every creak of the old wood made him flinch. The files lay spread across his table. He kept rereading them, hoping for some way to end the curse completely. There was none, only the warning. Blood binds, but the hunger remains. He barely ate, barely slept. And that night, at 3:33 a.m., a knock came at his door. Slow, heavy, 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. He froze. No one should be outside. Holding his breath, he looked through the peephole. Empty hallway. Then a voice whispered from the door's other side. Miguel, open, we're waiting. His blood ran cold. He didn't open the door. The following morning, June called. "Bro, something's wrong." Miguel's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Mannequins," June whispered. "People are seeing them, outside. Near the mall. Near homes. They move when no one's looking." Miguel's stomach twisted. The curse was leaking out. The books burning had released something. Finding it in the basement wasn't enough. The land itself was tainted. Miguel met June at a small cafe near the mall. Both of them looked haggard. June showed him photos taken on his phone. One an empty street at dawn. Another the same spot, but a mannequin now stood by a lamppost, arms outstretched. Third photo, a blurred shape in a nearby alley, half seen, almost human. June's voice was low. "It's getting worse. We need to stop this. For good." Miguel nodded. "I know, but I need help. We have to go back. One last time." June hesitated, then handed him an old wooden cross on a string. "My Lola said, sometimes faith helps when the old things stir." Miguel took it with trembling hands. Tomorrow night they would return and finish it. That night, Miguel sat in his dark apartment, flashlight and cross close at hand. The hours crept by, and then his phone buzzed again. Another unknown text. "You cannot bind what does not die." Miguel's throat tightened. A second message. "The fire freed us." The shadow spreads. His breath came faster. A sudden scraping sound came from the window. Miguel forced himself to look and nearly screamed. A mannequin stood outside on the narrow fire escape. Its head twisted toward him, featureless face pressed to the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Its hand wrapped the window, fingers twitching. Miguel grabbed his crowbar and flashlight, ready to fight, but in the blink of an eye, the figure was gone. Only faint wet footprints remained on the metal grating. He knew then. The thing in the basement was just a part of it. The real curse was older, tied to the land itself. He couldn't fight it from his apartment. Tomorrow, he and June would return to the lowest level of the crypt, beneath the concrete, where it had all begun. Miguel and June stood before the mall in the dead of night. Both wore heavy jackets, flashlights taped to their wrists, crosses around their necks. Miguel carried the old binding files and a bag of salt, ancient protection from spirits. June clutched a crowbar. "You ready?" Miguel nodded, though his hands trembled. "We have to finish this." The mall doors creaked open at their touch. The power was dead. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows. Something was wrong. The air smelled of rotting earth. As they reached the basement door, it swung open before them as if welcoming them in. They stepped carefully down the stairs. The old binding circle remained scorched on the floor, but the thing was gone. Escaped. Miguel checked the files. One note stood out. "If the shadow rises, seek the root. Beneath the foundation, deeper than stone, return the offering. Complete the rite." "We need to go lower," he whispered. June pointed at a rusted old hatch in the corner, half hidden by debris. That must be it. With effort, they pried it open, revealing a narrow, crumbling shaft, old stone stairs spiraling down into blackness. A foul wind rose from below. Miguel swallowed hard. "Let's go." They began their descent. The stairs felt endless. Walls of ancient stone pressed close around them, slick with moisture. Strange marks, half-buried runes decorated the walls. Far below, a deep rhythmic sound echoed, like a heartbeat in the earth. Thump, thump, thump. June gripped his crowbar tightly. "We're not alone." They reached a landing, a vast cavern, older than the mall, older than the city. In the center stood a crumbling stone altar, surrounded by broken skeletons. And before it, the creature, no longer human, no longer smoke and shadow. It had grown, taller than a man, with a face of shifting darkness, limbs too long and thin, flickering as if between worlds. Eyes of burning red stared at them. "You should not have come," it hissed. "We were bound, but now we rise." Miguel's knees nearly buckled in terror, but he forced himself forward. "We're here to end it." He and June spread the salt in a wide circle, placing candles and the old symbols from the files. Miguel began to chant the ancient rite, voice shaking but strong. The creature shrieked, lunging toward them, but struck the salt line, recoiling in rage. "You cannot stop us. The land remembers. Blood remembers." Miguel's voice rose, calling on the names from the old rites, offering his blood once more to seal the old curse. The shadows writhed. The heartbeat quickened. Thump, 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 thump. The cavern shook, dust falling in clouds. Miguel's voice grew hoarse as he pushed through the final lines of the rite. June held the creature at bay with flame and cross, barely keeping it from breaking the circle. Suddenly, a memory from the files came back. Blood alone is not enough. The living must choose to bear the seal to bind the curse anew. Miguel realized with dread someone must take the curse into themselves, become its warden, or it would escape again. June met his eyes. "I'll do it." Miguel's heart clenched. "No," but June smiled faintly. "You've fought enough. You have to tell the others. Warn them. I don't have anyone left." Before Miguel could stop him, June stepped into the circle, cutting his palm, letting blood fall on the altar. He spoke the final words. A blast of cold wind tore through the cavern, the creature's scream echoing in the stone. The darkness collapsed inward into June's body. He staggered, then stood still, eyes glowing faintly. His voice, layered with other tones, spoke. "It is bound. The land will sleep again. But watch the doors. Never open them." Miguel's eyes burned with tears. "June," but his friend only smiled faintly. "Go, while you still can." Miguel fled up the crumbling stairs, through the empty mall, out into the dawn. Behind him, the mall groaned as if the earth itself was settling once more. Weeks passed. The mall remained closed. No official reason was given. Repairs, they said. But Miguel knew the truth. He told the few others who would listen, Marla, a couple of trusted old guards. Never go down below. Never break the seals. He still felt watched, sometimes shadows shifting in corners, mannequins turning when his back was turned. But the true hunger had gone silent. For now. He dreamed of June often. His friend's face, sometimes kind, sometimes distant, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. A new guardian of the curse. Bound by blood. Miguel had kept the files, the photos, the notes locked away. He began writing it all down, a record for the future, in case the next owners of the land ever forgot. One night, weeks later, a letter arrived at Miguel's door. No return address. Inside, a small piece of folded paper scrawled in June's handwriting. "I still watch. Do not fear. But warn them the shadow is patient." Miguel sat in silence, staring at the note for a long time. He whispered, "I will. I promise." One final time, Miguel returned to the mall. It would soon be demolished, the land sold for redevelopment. He walked the empty halls alone. The lights were off, the air cold and still. Near the old basement door, he placed a final warning sign. "Do not enter." Binding in place. "For your own safety." And beneath it, in small letters, "The land remembers." He stood there a long moment, cross in hand, whispering a prayer for June and for whatever might still slumber below. Then he turned and walked away. The morning sun rose as he left Baywalk for the last time. Miguel didn't know if the curse would stay bound forever. But he knew one thing. Some places hold old darkness. And some stories like his own must be told so that others do not repeat the same mistakes. And so he wrote, "This is my story. Of the late-night shift at Baywalk. Of the thing beneath. If you are reading this, remember, some doors should stay closed. Some shadows should never be stirred. And if you hear knocking in the night, do not answer.